Welcome to the Kansas Forest Service podcast, the podcast that tells the unique stories of the men and women dedicated to forestry and wildland fire in Kansas. Each month, you will gain insight into the ways our staff and partners protect and manage forests, woodlands, and windbreaks for all Kansans. I'm your host, Cassie Wondersea, and today I've got Chuck Otte with me. He's the Ag and Natural Resources Agent for Geary County Research and Extension. Chuck, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm trying to stay warm. You know, it's wintertime in Kansas, so every once in a while we're going to have some cold weather. That's just all there is to it. But doing great, doing great.
Awesome. Well, so let's just jump right in. So can you tell me what it is exactly that you do as the Ag and Natural Resources Agent here in Geary County?
An Ag and Natural Resources Extension Agent has a lot of responsibility, and because of the somewhat unique nature of Geary County, I spend about half my time doing horticulture and natural resources and half the time doing production agriculture. So it's, I help producers with their crop production issues, pasture management, identify insect and disease problems, or if they are a problem. Do the same for homeowners with their lawns, their turf grasses, their vegetable gardens, their trees, their shrubs. Over the years I've developed a bit of a reputation for, I don't know what this is. I'm going to call Chuck. So I relish in identifying everything, whether it's insects, diseases, mushrooms, sometimes trees, weeds, just whatever. And if I don't know, I'm usually going to be able to find out within 48 hours and get back to that person. I just enjoy knowing what's around me and helping other people to know what's around them.
That's a really wide breadth of knowledge to have, Chuck.
It is. It's developed over the years. As one of those things. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska and was a 4-H'er and was active in crops judging and weed and native plant identification contests. So a lot of this just came by naturally. I never know what's going to walk in the front door or the call on the phone, or nowadays it could be the text or the email. But it does make it a lot of fun. But I try to identify certain problems that are emerging or might be coming up, and then work on a little bit more dedicated program for helping producers with their soybean production or their wheat production or their pasture management, controlling, invasive weeds in their pastures. Or past couple of years, we've had some real bad bagworm problems. So I've been spending time getting extra information out, and just doing whatever I can to help the people with their quality of life. The people that live in town, they may have a garden, they likely have a lawn, and that spare time, we're doing 8, well, sometimes 10 hours a day at the office. So the rest of the time we're probably at home, especially the past year. So how can I help them have the highest quality of life by having a lawn that they enjoy, having healthy trees to provide shade, just any of those kind of things, just whatever I can do to make the people in my county have a higher quality of life.
So it definitely sounds like helping people is a big motivation for you.
Oh, it absolutely is. And my parents were that way. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And my parents met at a 4-H meeting in the 30s, for crying out loud. So, I was kind of destined, but they were always very service oriented, involved in the church, involved in the community. They were always involved. And I really was juggling 2 possible ways to take my career when I was in college and grad school. One was to be a plant breeder, a geneticist, and get a PhD, or to wind up being a county extension agent, which I jokingly always say was my fallback position. And I came to a crossroads and thought I was heading to North Dakota State University to get a PhD, and realized that I really needed a break for 3 or 4 years. So started looking around and finally landed a county agent job here in Kansas, the one here in Geary County. And that 3 to 4 years has now turned into a full career. I just celebrated my 39th anniversary. So, it's something I love. Most days I can go home in the evening knowing that I helped somebody solve a problem.
So how have you seen extension change and grow over those 39 years in your position?
Technology.
Mm-hmm.
It never ceases to amaze me, the things that how I did things, on February 12th, 1982 is just light years away from what I do today. But in some ways, it's still the same. The end goal is still the same. It's just the tools I use to get there have changed. Um, I see that we still have a lot of people that don't know about extension and the
Mhm.
resources that we have to help them. And that's one of the things that I just try to reach out in whatever I can. Social media. This past year, I just was putting out a lot of Facebook posts, just trying to get information out there because the playing field had changed starting in March of 2020 with the pandemic and all. So, but yeah, I mean, people can get in touch with me so much quicker. There's a lot of times that farmers are sending me pictures of insects, texting me pictures or emailing me pictures of insects right from the field. And I can, in 5 minutes, I don't have to get in the county vehicle, drive out to the field, take a look at it, find the problem that they were seeing. Um, they can take a picture, send it to me, and 5 minutes later, no matter where I am, I can be responding with what that problem is. People try to describe a plant to me or an insect to me, and they think they've described it perfectly, and they've narrowed it down to about, one or 200 possibilities. So the ability to take a picture with your phone
Mhm.
and then text it to me or email it to me, or even just walk into my office and say, "Hey, I got this picture I want you to look at." I was getting ready to have a medical procedure done one time several years ago, and the doctor's in chatting with me before they put me under, and he says, "Hey, before you go to under," pulls out his phone and he says, "You know what kind of snake this is?" And I'm like, "Gosh, I don't get a break anywhere." But
Man.
it was just hilarious. But I love being able to do that, and the
Mhm.
technology that we have, the communicative technology has come so far, and just instant communication from wherever I am to wherever they are.
Mhm. So would you say that technology has really assisted you like throughout the pandemic as we've really had to minimize our public contact?
Absolutely. It's done a lot for not just me, but for a lot of extension agents in that you get a job for a while and you tend to, what works and you just keep going along with that. And then all of a sudden you can't do that. So the floodgates were thrown wide open for us to play, if you will. And if something didn't work, it's like, okay, well, we're not going to do that again. But if
Mhm.
something worked, it was like, oh, wow, hey, we can go with this. And that's what I really started doing with Facebook. Um, I would try to get about at least 3 times a week, have some interesting picture of something that I'm seeing around the area. One of my favorite ones was ants on peony buds in the spring,
Mhm.
and talk about how people think that if they don't have ants, the peonies won't bloom, and actually, there's a whole bunch of other stuff involved there. But I posted that, and that thing wound up having over a 7,000 audience reach. It just kept
Oh.
going and going and going. It
Mhm.
just blew me away. I know it was going way beyond Geary County. It was going way beyond the
Mhm.
state of Kansas. So it really has given me a chance to try different things. Eventually, I hope I can get back to doing a lot more in-person stuff. I'm hoping that, before I retire here in the future, that I'll be able to do programs in front of real people again instead of just zooming
Yeah.
in on it.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'm figuring out new things. And if an almost 65-year-old county agent can figure out how to do Zoom technology and Facebook and Twitter, we can do it. And
Mhm.
it's made it. I'm a techno nerd anyway, so I like the technology and the chance to play around with it like I have. I love doing photography, using my macro lenses, or sometimes just using my cell phone, whatever it takes. The beauty of the cell phone technology and with that camera wherever you go is, if you see something, take a picture of it.
Mhm.
People used to say there's a tree in front of the building there at Fifth and Jefferson. It's got really pretty red leaves. You know what it is? I'm going, okay, Fifth and Jefferson. What building is at Fifth and Jefferson? Now I can just tell them, take a picture, send it to me, bring it in to me. I'll identify the tree for you.
Mhm.
So I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
Yeah. I think that's such a huge difference. I think about my grandpa, who farmed here in Geary County for his entire life, and they used to dairy. And every now and then at his house, we'll still get something from the Geary County Extension office addressed to him. I probably need to have you update that to
Yeah, I
me
really
now.
probably should do that, but yeah, it's just extension tends to go generational. If
Mhm.
your grandparents knew about it, then your parents knew about it, then you probably know about it.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
get so many calls from, or people stopping in the office going, "Well, I was talking to somebody and they said I needed to come and talk to you." And I'm going,
Mhm.
"Word of mouth advertising, you bet. That's what we need."
Yeah, yeah, it really takes a mix of different platforms and social circles to get that information out there. And
But
I'm totally biased. I think Extension has great information.
But the rapid advent of technology also makes it challenging sometimes in how do I make sure that the local people are finding out about a program that I'm going to do,
Mhm,
whether it's a Zoom
mhm.
program or an in-person program? They're probably listening to satellite radio or a streaming service on their phone or
Sure.
computer. They're not listening to a local radio station. They're not reading the local newspaper. How do I get the information out to them? So that's always a challenge.
It sounds like you're really connecting with folks in a lot of different and even new ways as we're still navigating the pandemic and it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon.
No,
So we're gonna have to keep figuring this out as we
right,
go.
right, and that's fine. I mean, I enjoy doing. I mean, I just I love being out of doors. I love
Mhm,
being out in the prairie. I love being in the timber. I love walking around Milford Lake in my case,
mhm,
and
mhm,
I'm an avid bird watcher. So I try to use that opportunity to get more people outdoors. When we
mhm,
can again, I'll be holding monthly
mhm,
bird walks at Milford Lake, and that is just so much fun to get people out there and to get them to realize that wow, we've got a lot of things around here. And if it's a slow
mhm,
bird watching day, we'll talk about wildflowers, we'll talk about grasses, we'll talk about butterflies, whatever it is. Just and that's one of the things I think that the pandemic has allowed us to do. We've been looking for safe things to do that isn't in front of a screen somewhere. Get
mhm.
outside, get some exercise. So all of a sudden, we're seeing this big explosion of people that are putting up bird feeders outside their house. And in cold weather like this, that's a great way to
Mhm,
watch birds because they're going to be
mhm,
coming in with that heated
mhm.
bird bath and all that. They'll love it. But just going out walking, and then they suddenly realize, wow, we have birds here. So it's just it's really I've been reaching out, been doing Zoom programs for other extension offices on backyard bird feeding. I did one earlier in February. I'll be doing one later in February. The one later in the month, they've got over 125 people already signed up to
Wow.
watch this on backyard bird
Mhm,
from at least 3 states, from 4 states actually. I saw the list the
hmm.
other day, so all over the state. So it's something that the popularity is just exploding.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really interesting to see that. And even me, like from my window, I've got my three bird feeders set up and it's so fun to watch them. And it's amazing how entertaining it can be to watch birds.
The thing about starting in the backyard, it doesn't take very much money to buy one or two feeders, some bird seed to put in them, put them where you can see them from a warm, comfortable place, and then it's multi-generational. The grandparents, the grandkids, and maybe the generation in between can all sit around on a cold Saturday morning watching the birds coming and going. And you can get just a simple little bird book. And I'm still a firm believer, as much as I am a techno guy, a firm believer in having printed books. I think, especially for bird watching, is so important. Yeah, there's resources on the internet, but having that book in hand is so helpful. And then just figuring out, is that an American goldfinch or is it a pine siskin? What kind of sparrow is that? A lot of people, any small brown bird on the ground is a sparrow, but we have over 25 species of sparrows in Kansas. So it's a challenge, it's fun, and it takes you away from a screen and gets you start interacting with nature.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's one thing I find myself even falling into, even as an avid outdoors woman and somebody involved in forestry and natural resources in the state. It's so easy to hear from somebody, oh yeah, I just watched this great show on Netflix and to watch all 8 seasons in a weekend, which probably isn't the best thing for our mental health at this point.
Yeah, I just can't get into that. I don't know of anything that I'd want to watch that much again. Well, maybe WKRP in Cincinnati. That was a pretty good show, but showing my age there. But no, it's I would rather just sit there in a chair by the window and watch the birds come and go because
Hmm.
it's an ever changing canvas of nature. And it
Hmm.
just makes it
Hmm.
so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and so we talked a little bit about, the backyard bird watching and putting out a few feeders. But I'm sure you do a lot more bird watching beyond just your backyard. So what are some of those areas or some of that habitat that people can think about creating or improving, where they can bird watch or just go out and enjoy the outdoors?
Kansas is the great birdwatcher secret that some of us are torn between. We need to let people know about it, but we need to keep it to ourselves. But I've been spreading the word too. If you think about the state, we're right in the middle of the country. People go, well, you're so far from everywhere. No, we're equally close to everywhere. If you look at the eastern end of the state, we've got forests. You get down to extreme southeast Kansas, we got a little bit of that Ozark Plateau. We've got oak and hickory timber up the eastern, east of the Flint Hills. We've got these massive grassland areas. Then you get clear out to Cheyenne County or Morton County, and you're on the Colorado border. And the birds that you will routinely encounter on the eastern border often are very different than the birds you're going to encounter on the western border. And that makes it so much fun. We have confirmed over 484 species of birds in Kansas, and we're about to add the 485th here pretty soon. Um, and being equally north and south, we're far enough north that we can get the northern birds in the wintertime. We haven't for a couple of years, but we can get invasions of snowy owls, which is so cool. We're far enough south that in the end of the breeding season, certain birds just take off and they go wandering north. Exotic birds like swallowtail kites and roseate spoonbills, just amazingly birds. And you can get them all in Kansas. So when we go out and right here where we are in Geary County, it's just wonderful. But all through this area, you've got the last vestiges of the eastern deciduous forest coming down the Kansas River, coming down, the Meridocene and the verdigris. So you've got those timber areas, and then you go a half mile away and you're up in the middle of the prairie. So you can have a pileated woodpecker and the warblers of the eastern deciduous forest, and go just a little ways away and you can have the upland sandpipers of the prairies. You can have the henslow sparrows, just this wonderful diversity. Then let's throw into the mix all of these flood control lakes that the Corps of Engineers built in the 50s and 60s. So suddenly you've got this prairie state that has these large bodies of water, and you get gulls of all kind, ring-billed gulls and herring gulls and sometimes exotic gulls. You get pelicans, huge flocks of pelicans coming through here. You go on out to some of the upper areas of those lakes, or you head out to central Kansas to Cheyenne Bottoms and Quivira National Wildlife Refuge, these huge interior marshes. Those two complexes, Quivira and Cheyenne Bottoms, there's certain shorebird species that 90% of the world population goes through them every spring. So it's just absolutely amazing to go out there. Right now we're in the middle of winter, but these little
Mhm.
birds are tough, they're hardy, they're designed for it. They've been doing this for millennia. So it's no problem as long as they've got food and some open water. So you
Mhm.
can go out in the middle of February, and in a good day of birding, you can pick up 50 or 60 species of birds just by
Wow.
going to these different habitats that we have available to go to. And to me, the never ending change from one ecosystem to another makes it so much fun. I love going into the timbers and seeing the Kentucky warblers and the black and white warblers and the red-eyed vireos and just all those woodland species. Then going out to Milford Lake, and the bald eagles are
Mhm.
starting to lay eggs and go on nests now. We've got several nests around Milford Lake. Last year we set a new record for active bald eagle nests in the state. It was 100 and it was over 135 nests. So
Wow.
all these amazing things going on. You can see the hawks out soaring over the prairies, the red-tailed hawk, or the northern harrier. So all
Mhm.
these wonderful birds that are out there, and once again, we're getting outside, we're getting some exercise. If it's cold, we're probably getting some vigorous exercise to get back to the car to warm up.
Yeah.
But there's just so much out there for us to see. And while you're in the timber, looking at the warblers, you run into this,
Mhm.
obviously 200-year-old bur oak tree, or this wonderful old hackberry tree that got struck by lightning 25 years ago, and you can still see the scars, and just amazing things that we get to see.
Mhm. So as we're thinking about those habitat areas or for private landowners, what are some of the suggestions you would have for those folks as they're thinking about land management for wildlife, especially, as we're talking about birds specifically?
Yeah, well, and I've had a lot of inquiries in recent years about, improving northern bobwhite, improving greater prairie chickens. So it's learning what they need. The prairie chickens need those large swaths of prairie that are devoid of trees and shrubs. So just good grassland management. In our woodlands, we're facing the threat of the bush honeysuckle and trying to get that nasty invasive shrub out of there, and just getting it out and away. I mean, the birds are attracted to the berries, so we've really got to get that cleared out. So how can we do that and how can we improve, just even if you don't want to harvest any timber, how do we make it a healthier forest area? And there's a lot of things, just cutting out and selectively culling, maybe protecting certain areas, stream bank stabilization. The trees are so crucial to keeping those stream banks stable and not eroding away. So it's just, there's a lot of help either through extension, through the Kansas Forest Service. There's a lot of resources, a lot of advice there. And I think a lot of it is just, you start off figuring out, okay, do I want to protect this prairie? Do I want to protect this stream bank area? Do I want to protect this lock of timber where I grew up hunting squirrels in, or whatever?
Mhm.
And then, okay, what does that specific species need? And we're getting a lot more awareness of the need, because what we found out through a lot of the work of the Endangered Species Act is, if you take the actions to protect an ecosystem, you protect a lot of species, species of birds, species of reptiles, species of mammals, species of insects. We talk about pollinators and monarchs, and the troubles that they're facing now for global warming or whatever. So if we start improving ecosystems, and any one farm or ranch can have multiple ecosystems on it. If we just be good stewards and start taking care of those, ask for help when we don't know what we need to do, it really can make a big difference, and improve even small patches of prairie, small areas of timber, and you will be amazed at the kind of wildlife that you will find in that.
Do you find that you have a lot of landowners that you work with in the area that are really specifically interested in that?
It's a growing number. It's a growing number. Where we live here, because of proximity to Salina, to Topeka, to Manhattan, to Junction City, we have more and more people that are going out and buying that 30, 40, 60 acre tract of land, just because they want to be out in the country. And I can certainly, I grew up on a farm, and just in the past year, my wife and I moved out to the farm north of Junction City where she grew up. So I love being out in the country too, and as do you. So yeah, people like to be out there, and when they get out here, they start realizing, wow, there's just a lot of trash in this timber area. I wonder what I can do to clean it up. Should I cut down all the dead trees? Well, no, you don't want to cut down all the dead trees, because you got some brood trees in there. But how can you do some selective cutting and get some firewood, and at the same time improve the overall stand? How can you
So yeah, I
do
know
some
that
burning
making
or
those
brush
improvements are a big
control
part of even what I've
and
done
clean up that
here
prairie
on
and
our
make it
family farm
more
where I've moved back
attractive
and
to
remodeled in my
the little
grandpa's
Henslow
house. And
sparrow or the
I
upland
look around
sandpiper,
and
or
all
maybe
I
the
see
greater
are
prairie
hackberry
chicken,
trees.
even the wild
And it drives
turkeys.
me
They're out there
crazy. I
too.
have spent more time on a chainsaw, I think, cutting hackberries than I've done anything else since I've been here. So
It is frustrating. It is frustrating, and we see that in ecosystems over time, that there's the natural progression of species, and you start with the cedar trees, and then the hardwoods start moving in, and you get the shorter lived things like hackberries, which are an excellent wildlife tree, by the way, because a lot of birds and critters eat those small berries throughout the winter. But
mhm,
that also means they get spread all over kingdom come. So at times the natural progression needs a little bit of help. So
mhm,
we need to get out there and get some oak trees planted, get some walnut trees planted.
mhm.
There's just a lot of stuff that we need to do, and that's where I think the folks at the Kansas Forest Service, the foresters, can come out and say, okay, we need to lay out a plan for you. And
Mhm.
sometimes I think people want to try to do everything at once. And one of the big things when I do one of these walkarounds with a new landowner is, okay, you just moved out here and you're looking at this and you're thinking, I want to do this, this, and this. Break it up over 5 to 10 years,
Mhm.
because you're going to kill yourself otherwise. What's the initial stuff? What's the critical stuff? Start close to the house, then start working your way out. And what is your big passion? Work on that first,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
do some of the other stuff. Then come back to it. So it's really it's getting a plan together, and don't let it overwhelm you. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You got to
Yeah.
break it down and work your way through it.
Yeah, it definitely can get overwhelming really quickly. And so I've always broken it up. I spend some time where I need a chainsaw, and then I'll go work on my garden area, or go work on the house, or get out and go for a walk. And
You've got to save your state of mind,
mhm,
because otherwise, yeah, it will get overwhelmed. And we
mhm,
just moved out, even though my mother-in-law had been living there since my father-in-law passed away, until she lost her a few years ago. I was out there a lot working on
mhm,
things, little things at a time. But now that we're out there, I can work on it every day, basically. And
Mhm.
some days you just have to say, no, it's too much. But
Yeah.
as you make those little progress, take a lot of pictures along the way,
Mhm.
because then you can sit down a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now and say, oh, wow, I forgot how bad that area looked and how great it
Mhm.
looks now.
Mhm.
And now I'm getting this plant, I'm getting that planted. I mean, I've got 20 years worth of things that I want to do out of the farm. So,
Yeah.
it's just, you don't have to do them all at once. You shouldn't do it. You can't afford to do them all at once, and you
Yeah.
don't have the physical energy to do it all at
Yes.
once either.
Oh, that's so true. So what's your
But
favorite project that you guys are working on at home
r-
right now?
right now I am working on a brick patio.
Oh, okay.
I had bricks at our place here in town that came from the farm where I grew up in Nebraska. They actually came out of the
Mhm.
chimney, and I used them to build a walkway. I pulled the walkway up, I moved them out and got about half the area covered. So we've got a friend that has some bricks. So once the weather warms up, I'll be finishing the brick patio in the back of the house, because everybody comes and goes from the back of a farmhouse.
Mhm.
That's just the way it
Mhm.
always
Yeah.
is. So
Yeah.
it's also on the on the east side of the house. So
Mm.
in the evening, you're in the shade. It just makes a lot of
Mhm.
fun. But I'm a big garlic grower, and I have a planted twice as much garlic this past fall as I ever have before.
Oh gosh.
I have fruit trees. I grew up on a farm with a big fruit orchard, so I want to get some
Mhm.
more fruit trees planted. Got some of the old Siberian elms around the farmstead that
Mhm.
need to come down, and I want to. Brother-in-law uses some for firewood, so we want to, take our time getting them cut down. Want to get a few more windbreak trees planted at different places around the house. The old windbreak on the north is still pretty effective, but its days are numbered. So
Mhm.
maybe get some southwestern white pines snuck in there and get the brome grass away from them so they can survive.
Yeah.
And then looking at wildlife, just really trying to plant more native shrubs that are wildlife friendly.
Mhm.
There's just lots of things I want to try, but right now it's when the weather warms up, going to finish that brick patio.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that way you've got a great spot to sit and
Well,
do
well, and we
more bird
do.
watching.
And that's exactly right, because we'll sit out there. We've got red-shouldered hawks that are now nesting around the farmstead. And red-shouldered hawks 15 years ago weren't this far northwest in the state. They've been moving north and west as we've been getting more and more well-established timber along the rivers and streams. So
Mhm.
we've been, and I one of my projects is to uh, monitor the birds and the official lists in every county. And over the past 20 years, I can just see how these species have been moving their way across the state.
Mhm.
Barred owls, the pileated woodpecker, also. These are all riparian timber birds that 20, 30 years ago were in very southeast Kansas
Mhm.
only. And
Mhm.
now they're clear out past the line in some cases. So
Wow.
we enjoy sitting out there. We've got painted buntings, we have indigo buntings, we have hummingbirds. And just sitting out there watching the hummingbird wars in August and September is just so much fun. So,
Mhm.
and it's just, I don't have to have a screen in front of me to be happy. And the natural world becomes the ever changing screen of my
Mhm.
life.
Mhm. Well, and I think that's one great thing about bird watching or pretty much just about any outdoor activity in Kansas that folks want to get into is it's not expensive. I mean, you can go walk in a state park or a city park and look at birds for free. I mean,
Exactly, exactly. And what I always tell people when I do my bird watching, bird feeding programs is, you're out there enjoying the birds because it brings you pleasure.
mhm,
It doesn't matter if you call it a wild canary or a goldfinch. If that bird brings you pleasure, great. If you don't care what the names of the birds are, that's wonderful. If you want to learn, if you want to be a better bird watcher, I can give you advice on bird books and binoculars and all that kind of stuff. But if you're just out there in the natural world, enjoying the birds, and you can watch them and you can listen to them. That's the beauty of birds; are multisensual. So it's just great to get out there. Yeah, they're free; they don't charge admission. So you put out a little bit of bird seed or take a little bit of time to walk, and you
mhm,
can hear them and see them.
mhm. So, do you have any suggestions for a good bird identification book for birds that would be here in Kansas for folks to get started in?
Absolutely. A lot of times people will ask me that very question. I want a bird book for Kansas. Well, there is a book called Birds in Kansas. It's a
Hmm.
big tabletop book. I was fortunate to get to co-author that. Um, but that's not really a bird book. So I encourage people to get something like the Ken Kaufman Guide to Books. Uh, that wasn't right. The Ken Kaufman Bird Book, or the Sibley Guide, or the National Geographic. Those are my three favorites right there. Ken Kaufman guide. Ken grew up in Wichita, world renowned bird watcher, and he can think still after all these years, he can think like a beginning bird watcher. And the bird book is organized just a little bit differently. But the Sibley guide is good. The National Geographic guide is good. But any one of those three, and the cheapest, I mean, they're going to be $20 to $30 basically. So that's not too much money. And then I just tell people to start with the birds in your yard. Learn the common birds. The cardinal is pretty easy to pick out. The robin's pretty easy to pick out. Then start working up from that. The bluebird, the orioles when they start getting here, things like that. And if you get stumped, find another bird watcher. Email me a picture of it, or call me up and ask me, and I'll help you through it. So there's a lot of us out there that love birding and love to help other people with birding. Don't just send me a picture and say, I want to know what this bird is so I can label the picture in my files. Learn about the bird, learn what they eat, why they're here, when they're here. If they aren't year round, where do they go the rest of the time? So it's just, there's so much that we can learn. And with kids, with children, it becomes a geography lesson. Okay, this bird, the chimney swifts are here from the 20th of April until the 10th of October. Where do they go after that? Okay, let's get the map out. Okay, they're going to go down to the rainforest of the Amazon, which is just amazing. Where is the Amazon? Where are those? That's in South America. That's another. There's so many learning opportunities that families can do together that are focused and centered around birds. I'm kind of
Yeah.
passionate about it, if you couldn't tell.
I couldn't tell at all, Chuck. I have to I want to back way back up in the mind of Chuck. Where did your interest in birds come from? What sparked that passion in you?
I've been a bird watcher since I was 4 years old.
Wow.
My mother was a bird watcher. My grandmother was a bird watcher. I jokingly say I was genetically predisposed and never had a chance. It was destined to happen. Part of it was just from as long as I can remember, I had to be able to put a name with everything I saw. It's a June bug. Well, there's two different kinds of brown bugs here, and they're both June bugs. Yeah, I drove my parents crazy. I know I did, but it was really all these things that I couldn't have picked a better childhood and educational background to be a county extension agent, because just everything fascinated me. But I'm really not sure what it was. I can think of three different birds that were just hooks that went into me a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. Um, Sandhill cranes go through the Platte River area of central Nebraska.
Hmm.
And that was 45 miles from where I grew up. So we would go out there all the time. Then when I was probably 14, 15 years old, I saw and identified my first indigo bunting. It's a bird that breeds here in eastern Kansas, dark blue, likes timber, beautiful
Hmm.
song. And when you get one in the light, it's just like, oh my gosh, that's gorgeous.
Hmm.
Then there was the lazuli bunting, a bird that kind of looks a little bit like a bluebird, that I saw, my wife and I saw out in Idaho. And just each one of these birds were just another hook getting deeper and deeper into me. And the last straw, you might say, or the one that really pushed me over the precipice, was the painted bunting. That's a bird that here in Kansas, we're sort of on the northwest, in this part of Kansas, we're on the northwest edge of its range, but it nests around us. It's got a beautiful song. And if you just see it up in the tree singing, you wouldn't think anything about it. But if you get the chance to see it up close, you realize it's got green and this orangish red and this blue color on it. It looks like somebody took all their leftover colors when they were making birds and put them all into one bird. And when people get a good look at this male painted bunting, it's just sort of like, it was like the one younger bird watcher, college age student that was working at Fort Riley over the summer that wanted to see a painted bunting, and we got her out to see one. And she looked at this bird, and it was just one of those perfect situations in the top of a tree. The sun was to our back. It was in the morning. It was singing, just showing off all of its colors.
Hmm.
And she looked at it for about 5 minutes. I could see her arms starting to shake with the binoculars because she was holding up so long. And she just said, I can die now. I've seen a painted bunting. And she just,
Wow.
it was
Yeah.
just so gorgeous. So, those three or four birds really, really were what
Hmm.
took me in. And then just people always say, what's your favorite bird? Well, it's the next one that I'm going to get to see. I mean, painted
Hmm.
buntings will always be very special to me because they're such a brilliant bird. And now everybody's going to the internet and looking at painted bunting to see what they look like. Um,
Right.
but it's just, I just love the endless array of birds,
Hmm.
and how one day in the spring, all of a sudden you've got 20 orange orioles in your trees, and they're there for a week, and then the wind changes around to the south, and all but two of them are gone. Just
Hmm.
that constantly changing tapestry of the natural world is just what just keeps bringing me back every spring.
Yeah, it's something to look forward to. You
Oh
see,
yeah.
and I'm sure I can speak for everyone else across the state of Kansas right now as we're in this deep frigid blast that I am ready for spring to get here. I'm ready for it to warm up a little bit. And just to wake up in the morning in springtime to hear those robins singing, I'm not sure that there's any that's much better than that.
Oh
So.
yeah, it's coming. It's coming. The first true spring migrants will get here around the 20th of March when the eastern phoebes start to return, and then the wintertime birds will start moving out depending on how long this cold weather lasts. But yeah, I mean, great horned owls are on nest already. Bald eagles are going on nest, so they don't wait for the first leaves of spring. Man, they're getting with it and getting going. So it's coming.
Yep. Oh, I'm very excited for it. I'm going to keep you to that. The 20th of March, I'm going to be looking for those birds, and I'll
Okay.
be I'll be giving you a call or dropping by the extension office to talk birds with you. So, but so Chuck, what are some of the resources where people can learn more about how their county extension agent can help them, or if they're here locally in Geary County or close by, where can people go to get that information?
What I tell people when I talk to them, and sometimes it's friends that have left from here and they live in another county, maybe another state, and they get back in touch with me. First of all, kind of get a list of your questions. And if it's anything about the natural world, the property you own, the trees, whatever, the county extension agents can probably help you.
Mm-hmm.
They may have separate horticulture and agriculture agents. That's
Hmm.
great, but get a list together because it's people will come in and say, "Well, I need some help on my property. I just bought 20 acres. Well, what do you need?" Well, I don't know. I need somebody to come and tell me what I need. Well, okay, what are your questions? Let's start with that.
Sure.
And once we have a list of questions, we can go from there.
Hmm.
Sometimes I will just go out and people will move in here, and it's one of the things that makes this area so fun. Folks that are connected with the army with Fort Riley, they'll
Hmm.
move. They're going to be here for 4 years. They just moved here from Georgia. They don't know what they've
Hmm.
got around them, so we just do a walk about their property. Okay, this is this tree. This is this tree. Okay, you've got a horse here. If you do this, you can clean up the pasture, make it provide more forage for your horse. These are some plants you want to get out of here. They could cause some problems. So
Hmm.
basically formulate what your questions are, have some kind of a goal in mind. What kind of goal are you working for? What do you want to accomplish? And then we can start walking through and saying, okay, these items are high priority, get these done first, then you can start working on this, and when those are done, then you can start doing the stuff lower down here on the priority list. So
Hmm.
they may be things that are going to take more time, more money, just something that is not quite as crucial as getting all the stickery trees out of your pasture so the horse doesn't hurt itself, that
Hmm.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, there's an office in all 105 counties in Kansas. There's offices in most of the 3,000 counties in the country, actually.
Hmm.
Um, but you can find it. You can go online at ksre.ksu.edu and find the picture of Kansas, a map of Kansas, and you can go to it, click on any county, and it'll tell you where the office is located and often who the people are, and just start there and get your list of questions out and start working through them.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom today and your passion, especially for birds. I had a feeling our conversation might head in that direction at some point.
That happens a lot with me. So,
Yeah.
but no, it's been wonderful to talk with you, Cassie. And yeah, please come on up to the office sometime. We'll go out and go bird watching some
Yeah,
Saturday.
no, that sounds great. Yeah, and once we thawed out a little bit, I'll be bringing some soil samples up to y'all so I can
Absolutely.
get going on my spring garden here. I got all my seed order in this last week, so I'm excited to
Good.
get going. It's been a little more
Good.
than I needed to, but that's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
right.
and that was the interesting thing about the pandemic last year. All of a sudden, people
Mhm.
were at home, so they said, "I'm going to garden," and there were places running out of garden seed because there
Yeah.
was the demand jumped 30 or 40%. So I
Hmm.
was telling people order early. I ordered my onions and my leeks clear back in November or last
Oh
fall.
wow.
So
Hmm.
I wanted to get those certain varieties. So
Yes, there's going to be a little competition for those this year for sure.
absolutely
So, but awesome. Well, Chuck, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
sounds good, Cassie. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.